how do we see the future of Africa? I believe that with good and immediate attention to comprehensive human capital development, we can see the end of extreme poverty in just 30 years' time. Coming up is World Bank video on an Africa Human Capital Plan, suggesting that economic growth can soon rise by an average of about 1.8%. I believe the number ought to be in the 5 to 7% region. As the video points out, empowering women, ending conflicts, building social capital, and using appropriate technologies can cause Africa to become more globally competitive. I agree. Let's take a look.
The wealth of a nation is not just in its produced capital or natural resources. It's in its people. Their skills, their health, their knowledge, and their resilience. People and their human capital are pivotal to the transformation of African economies. But the average child born today in sub-Saharan Africa will be only 40% as productive as she or he could be with complete education and full health. Launched in 2018 by the World Bank Group, the Human Capital Project is making a powerful case for investing in people. These investments can add 1.8% to African countries' annual growth over the next 50 years and pay economic returns for generations to come. The World Bank's Africa Human Capital Plan identifies several game changers to accelerate human capital development. First, empowering women and girls is key. This will directly improve human capital and can create a demographic change that can significantly impact poverty and human development, as well as fragility, climate, and inclusive economic growth.
A successful approach to accelerate the demographic transition include the 4 E's: empowering women, employing women, enhancing access to reproductive health services, and educating girls.
Second, preventing the loss of life in fragile and conflict settings and supporting displaced communities to increase human capital must be a major focus. Third, developing human capital requires multi-sectoral solutions. It's about more than education and health. It's about access to transportation, affordable energy, good governance, and interventions across other sectors like agriculture and water. It's also about social protection systems that help the most vulnerable cope with crises and shocks, find jobs, and invest in their family's future. Fourth, harnessing the opportunities that technology and innovation offer can improve human capital outcomes and productivity in many sectors.
Our next resource, also from the World Bank, has the Finance Minister of Ghana indicating how his country, under Nana Akufo-Addo as president, is now spending over 28% of its budget on education. Clearly, Africa would do well to spend more on education if it is at all to catch up soon with the rest of the world. Let's watch.
Our government attaches, great importance to the issue of education. And when we came into government in January of 2017, the president announced his vision of free senior high school education for everyone. That, of course, was colossal in terms of what it meant for the budget. It's not cheap. But he was very clear about the issue of social justice and access for everyone. And that is a country's responsibility to make that happen. Looking back, we are now spending about 28.9% of government expenditure on education, and 6% of the GDP almost on that. I think last year, coming to this year, we had another 20% increase for the ministry. And the results have been stunning. We've had about 290,000 new kids get into senior high school who would never have had a prayer of a chance to be there to discover their God-given talents and really the liberty to have a life of dignity. So we've had to also be really creative because now the infrastructure is straining. Now we have a 2.5% portion of VAT that we give to the Ghana Education Trust Fund. So the ministry, with the support of education, got very innovative about it and securitized those proceeds so that we have an additional $1.5 billion equivalent that we are using for infrastructure to support that. But I think the new commitment really now has to be what we do with teachers and parent involvement, because I think that's going to be the key to that. But of all of these numbers, you know, there's a big but to it. Sort of the average education, maybe 11 and a half years, but effectively about 5 years of that, you know, can be calculated to be really effective. So we need to work on that.
To follow up with this, let us see how the ability to read is critical. In Nigeria, there are some states where the percent of the population that can read and write in English is below 20, compared to highs in the 80 to 90% range. It is hard to escape poverty if you cannot read. Let's take a look.
I think on this panel in this room, we all agree that it's morally unacceptable and it's really bad public policy that half the children in the developing world can't read by the age of 10. Now, you know, there's been, as Ken said, there's been a huge effort to get kids into school, but now we've got to get them learning, and getting them to read is actually foundational to everything else. You know, a couple of times in the last few weeks I've been asked, but why did you just choose reading? Because aren't other things important too? And that's true. But if a kid can't read, she won't get maths, she won't get science, she won't get civics, she won't be able to participate fully as a citizen in the society. So it is the key, the foundation to all of the other things that we say are important in human capital. Now, as a Minister of Finance, Ken's first problem is he doesn't even know how many kids, 10-year-old kids in Ghana, can read. So that's his first problem, is to get the data to actually know. And a lot of countries have actually made a huge effort in good faith and allocated a huge amount of resources. He's a living example of a very committed Minister of Finance. 6% of GDP is fantastic. But now we actually have to focus on making sure that we're getting the results for that money.
In continuation, the Nigerian Minister of Planning also discusses the critical importance of education for the girl child as a solution to escaping poverty.
So, indeed, we have objectives, we have targets, specific targets for schooling and also for education of girls and also for literacy. These targets are part and parcel of our development strategies. That is our economic and social development plan. And if you think of literacy, there is another aspect to education, which is literacy. 70% of the population of Niger is illiterate. So only 29% is literate, especially illiteracy is predominant in the rural areas, especially. In Niger, we have 50% of our population that is less than 15 years old. So imagine that the 70% of illiterate people are mainly young people and especially young women. But our development strategy aims at education and literacy. And as far as literacy is concerned, we want to double the number of literate people by 2021. It's ambitious, but we want to get there. And I think it will be possible because we have a plan to speed up literacy with a literacy policy. What do? Well, we make sure that literacy be part of all sectoral programs. For instance, an agricultural program has a literacy aspect. Health programs, education programs, all development areas include a literacy facet.
In all this, wellness programs are essential. African workers must be healthy to be creative and innovative. Let us see this World Bank video titled Investing in People to Build Human Capital. It discusses education, health, social safety nets, and others. It is powerful. Let's watch.
Technology is rapidly advancing the skills frontier. Future workforces will need to be ready for highly skilled jobs. For countries to be prepared, investing in human capital, a population's health, skills, knowledge, and experience. Without human capital, countries cannot sustain economic growth or compete in the global economy. But even as they face these trends, countries still struggle with very basic challenges. For example, children in school for the same length of time learn much more in some countries than others. Half the world's population can't access essential health services, and in the world's poorest countries, 4 out of 5 poor people aren't covered by a social safety net.